Tonight on The Official, we have got a two-part episode. First, continuing with our interviews of the 2023 class. We're going to bring in McCae Hillstead. This guy out of Utah, Skyridge High School, has had over 5,500 passing yards, 1,500 rushing yards, and accounted for 87 touchdowns in the last 2 years. But you probably have not heard of him, despite the massive numbers. But David recently saw him in person at the Las Vegas Elite 11, and we were all very impressed. We mentioned him on the show when we were doing the recap, and now wanted to bring him on, talk about his game. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about some running backs in the 2023 class that are both big and very fast, which is a nice combination of features for the running backs we want to stash on our Dynasty C2C team. So without further ado, this is The Official. All right, it is Wednesday night. We are here with The Official. We've got Matt, we've got David, and special guest McCae Hillstead out of Skyridge High School out in Utah. Thanks for joining us from the Mountain Time Zone, McCae. What's going on?
Just having a pretty chill night. Usually we got some team activities going on, like 7-on-7, but tonight we're off. So
yeah, well, thanks for spending your free night talking to us. So David caught you at the Elite 11 in Las Vegas. And, I got to say, we were not necessarily well-versed in your game, but immediately you popped. He came back from the Vegas. He was like, okay, we talked about Malachi Nelson. We talked about Pierce Clarkson, some other guys. He's like, and there's this dude, McCae Hillstead, guys. And so we looked you up and, you pop on tape. So how did you feel you did at the event? Was it a success for you? Did you accomplish the things you set out?
Yeah, I felt really good about it. I think, in situations like that, especially when you're with some high profile guys, you get an opportunity to, sort of compare and contrast your game. And I thought that it was, pretty enlightening and pretty cool to be around some top level guys and, kind of figuring out, it's like, hey, I don't think I'm much different than these guys, maybe height a little bit, but as far as, capability, I don't think it's very far off. So that was pretty cool.
I think so too. All right, you mentioned height. So in the NFL right now, though, I feel like, and you got ways to go to the NFL, of course. I mean, there's going to be some stuff in between. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But I feel like the modern game, some of the modern spread offenses, some of the ways that quarterbacks are being deployed, this isn't quite the era of the 6'5", 250-pound statue. Have coaches talked to you about that or anything? And you're committed to Utah State, so they're obviously not too worried about it. I mean, has that been something that's been a point of discussion with the recruiters?
Yeah, it has been. There's been a couple interesting situations to where, I've gone into colleges thinking that, I was going to get scholarship offers going in and kind of being told that, and then I would measure maybe an inch or two shorter than they wanted me to, and then it wouldn't happen. So I've been, turned down a couple of times in that way, but I'm not bitter about it. I understand that that's sort of the way that, things go. And I think more and more now that there are NFL quarterbacks and college quarterbacks who are succeeding at, high level near to or my height, then, it's going to get a lot easier for guys like me who have athleticism and, the ability that maybe just don't have the.
Yeah, I mean, I could rattle off a couple. Mackenzie Milton was not a big guy, and he just destroyed at UCF before he got injured. And you got Dylan Gabriel is a similar, I think, size. Obviously, Kyler Murray is doing it in the actual NFL. All right, so we're talking about the game. You just mentioned athleticism, right? And I thought it was interesting. Rivals lists you as a pro style. Rivals is one of the only sites that still separates QBs into pro style and dual threat. But like I said in the intro, you've gained about 1,500 yards on the ground over the last 2 seasons. What do you think about that label? Would you say you're pro style, or how would you describe your game?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think I'm not a guy that is super, I don't predetermine when I'm going to run the ball and when I'm going to, pass on passing plays. I think I scramble, but no, I'd say I'm dual threat for sure.
Yeah.
Do you feel like labels like that are just old at this point, that they're kind of going the wayside, because almost every quarterback can at least run a little bit now, and even
Yeah.
if there isn't really a point in differentiating the two.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think it's. Yeah, I think that people are pushing for more and more athleticism in really any position. So yeah, I don't think it's useful.
All right, so your game, how would you describe it? You're a dual threat. I think that's totally true. You look spry back there. I mean, even in the drills, which is not really highlighting the scramble ability, but certainly does show movement, shows throwing on the run. You looked good there. Is there a QB, college or pro, that you kind of like say, I'd like to model my game after him? Or are you your own guy? How do you view that stuff?
Yeah, I think there's guys that I like watching for sure. I don't think that I try to emulate things point for point. Like, I really like the way that Russell Wilson escapes, in situations when he's getting, high rush from defensive ends, things like that. I like, Kyler Murray's ability to think on the fly when he's outside the pocket, things like that. Johnny Manziel, just being able to make whatever play whenever. I like things like that, but a lot of the time, when I'm out there on the field and I'm in the moment, I kind of just, rely on my preparation and instincts to take over. So, I'm not thinking too much about that necessarily, but yeah.
Kind of see the Johnny Manziel comp there a little bit, because you're just more of the free-flowing kind of react and see where the play takes you, and then you capitalize on that. I think it's part of what makes your game so fun to watch, is just that backyard style almost, where you're just thinking on the fly, making plays. It's awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's the first thing I noticed in Vegas was like kind of how twitchy you are, kind of like how Manziel was, like a quick flick of the wrist, clean mechanics generally. I think that's what stood out to me initially in Vegas, was that your mechanics were really clean, easily repeatable, quick motion. I think you had the second fastest motion according to Breakaway Data, which is pretty evident when I watch you. So like, I guess just talk about, do you have a QB coach? Do you guys look at that stuff, trying to like make your motion as fast as possible? Like, what goes into that?
Yeah. So at a young age, I trained pretty early with a program called Quarterback Elite. And we were pretty intensive. We went, for however many months, probably in the year, however many times we could train. We're going 4 times a month, so once a week. And, I've been training for a long time. And I think a lot of it just does come a little bit natural. I think how quick it comes out does come a little bit natural. But as far as the sequence and, where I'm getting at certain points, then, it's not, it's definitely something that I've learned. And over the past few months or year, you could say I've also been training with QB Influence, which is a different program, which is implementing some different stuff with hips and how to create disassociation from your top and lower half. So I'm still working on things like that.
Kind of just geeking out a little bit on some of the mechanics. So we love Breakaway Data. We've kind of met them as we went to the Elite 11 camps and things like that, and the things that they're doing with tracking and looking at things like release time. I mean, that's just amazing. And like David said, you can see it, but we also confirmed it, 0.36 seconds, which is like definitely top 90 something percentile in release time. You also have an excellent velocity, 46.6. That's really great miles per hour. So quick release and a lot of velocity is a great combination. And like David said, you showed up second in ball skill kind of metric, which is something that Breakaway does, where they just basically, I think, add the percentile of your release time and the percentile of your MPH velocity on the ball. So that combined with some escapability, some dual threat nature, I mean, I think you got a lot of tools that are going to be really excited at the next level. Let's talk a little bit about Utah high school football, which seems to be having a moment here in the last 5 years or so. You've got obviously Zach Wilson put BYU on the map, got drafted second overall. We've got Jackson Dart. We've got Devin Brown now. He came out of nowhere, transferring from Arizona, and then went crazy at Corner Canyon. So all these guys were at Corner Canyon. You're at Skyridge. So number one, is Corner Canyon like got a big target on their back? Everybody's trying to gun for them in the Utah high school football scene. And number two, like, do you just feel that Utah high school football is kind of on the up and up? It seems like it's getting a lot more publicity these days. And then obviously University of Utah is doing a lot of good things right now. BYU's always consistent.
Yeah. As far as Corner Canyon goes, I think, as far as publicity goes and media, I think that, they get highlighted quite a bit. So I think that amplifies the scene a little bit more. But as our team, we're pretty just focused on whatever opponent that we're getting week by week. So it's not we don't think about it very much. We're pretty confident in ourselves. But as far as confident, I think they've, as far as them being ranked in the top 25 max preps for the past couple of years, maybe even few years, I think that's starting to shed a little bit of light on Utah schools. And I think a lot of it with how advanced training can be and how, with all the weight programs that everyone's getting able to access, and especially in our area, and it's growing quite a bit. So we're getting more and more athletes. I think that, we're on the up and up. And I think also I think recruiting's maybe been a little bit better. I think we've always had talented guys, but maybe they just haven't got the ability to shine. And now that, there's media and Twitter and whatnot, I think that more people have the ability to get recruited and get reached out to.
I saw that you most recently got an offer from Washington State. How closed would you say your recruiting process is right now?
I think during this whole process, when I committed to Utah State, I was making sure that I was committed. I thought a lot about it. So when they offered me, I had been in contact with them for quite a while. Coach Morris got hired there just after this last season. They've just been in their reevaluation process. And, he's told me since the beginning that he wants to see, guys throw live. And he came out and saw me throw live. And after I already committed to USU, and then he offered me a couple of days later. So, that's been an interesting situation, but it's been something that I've been working out, all the while still being committed to Utah State, but just, figuring out, ways to navigate all that stuff and ways to talk to coaches as I'm being approached and whatnot.
Speaking of Utah State, so, we are a fantasy website at the core here, and Utah State offense is like a gold mine for us. I mean, we love that Utah State offense. Last year, what Bonner did and Devin Tompkins was absolutely insane for them. How they pass a lot. They obviously have a history of putting guys into the first round of the NFL, Jordan Love. So how do you see yourself fitting into that system at Utah State? Have they talked a little about what they envision for you in that offense? And I'll tell you, if you go there, I mean, there's a very good chance you'll wind up starting for one of our college side teams at least for a couple of years.
Yeah. I think, when I was evaluating everything in the first place, I thought a lot about scheme and how I'm going to be able to fit in a program. And I think naturally before I really evaluated if how they were going to implement me in their system, I just looked at their system sort of as of right now with someone like Logan Bonner or with whoever they're putting in at quarterback. And they do a lot of interesting stuff. They spread their receivers really wide, which makes it hard for linebackers to declare that they have to declare themselves early, and they have to coverages sort of become apparent, and it makes the zones and windows to throw quite a bit bigger, which is obviously really beneficial. But I think that when I get up there, it's probably going to implement some running stuff, to get me on the move, and whether that's draw or whatever it might be, or maybe just leaving it up to my scramble abilities. But as of right now, I think that there's not a ton that would need to be done to adapt the offense to me. I think it's fit for a guy like me. So, yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that arm strength and that velocity that we know you have comes in, especially if the receivers are way out wide. You're going to have to use all parts of the field. So yeah, you love to see that. You love to see that ability to get cross field, opposite hash outs and things like that. And I think you can deliver there. Luke is in the background. He's our producer tonight, but he always likes to ask the question, what kind of music do you listen to on Friday nights pregame? Like, do you have a ritual? Do you have kind of a routine before your games? And is there anything that gets you extra pumped up?
Honestly, I'm pretty interested in like Native American history and whatnot. And I don't know, I'm pretty interested in Scottish history and things like that. So, I usually listen to probably a couple, native chants and tribe songs and whatnot before the game. And I also turn on some kind of like Irish jig music. I have this one song called Whiskey in the Jar by the Dubliners that I always turn on right before I walk out. And it gets me going. And then I'm ready out there and I'm ready to go ball. Kind of just gets me in the moment, makes me feel present, which I like. That I can't really get that from, I don't know, modern day popular songs. I guess I kind of got to derive it from something a little bit deeper and more archetypal, I think.
Dude, well, you won that question. No one will ever top that answer, I don't think, in the history of our show.
Appreciate you coming.
Yep.
Thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will be rooting for Skyridge. Does your season and your playoff path go through Corner Canyon?
We generally, I think last year we tied them in our region, so we're in the same division as far as how they divide the state. So we compete for it every year.
I hope you can bring home a ring this year, and then good luck heading out to Utah State.
Thank you. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, talk to you later. See ya.
So, Matt, you have been working on something. You're always tinkering. You guys are both, David and Matt, you're always tinkering behind the scenes, and we're trying to throw a bunch of stuff against the wall to see what kind of metrics we can look at, what matters for projecting these guys to the next level beyond just the tape. I mean, of course, we're watching the tape, right? But can we do something a little bit extra and a little bit different? So walk us through what a joule is. I think that's a physics term, and what it means for why you're looking at it.
Yeah, so a joule is a unit of kinetic energy, basically. And for the purposes of what we're using it for, is it's similar to a speed score, where you're adjusting how fast the player is by how much they weigh, in order to find out who is a more prototypical athlete, at least in a straight line.
And we think that for a running back, being big and being fast should be really important, right? I mean,
yeah.
What do you think you want to do with this? So we've been calculating joules for some of these guys when we know their miles per hour reach, we know their weight, obviously from the recruiting sites. Can you walk our listeners through a little bit of just like hopes and dreams with the joule metric and what we might do?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it can just become an integral part of running back scouting at least for high school side. We'll see how it goes through with college. We don't have the data yet to back up how relevant it actually is, but that's something we'll be getting to in the future once we get our running back model up and going. But I think it has high hopes, and at the very minimum, we'll still have miles per hour. And that's very relevant for wide receivers, we know at least.
Yes, it's relevant for and all these things are kind of a threshold thing. David, what do you hope with joules? I mean, we throw a bunch of stuff against the wall.
Yeah, is it basically? I guess it could be a replacement for a speed score in some respects, or I don't know. The way I've been thinking about it is possibly like tackle breaking, maybe for running backs. Like, literally how much force can you, basically like put on a defender, So I don't know. That's how I'm thinking about it.
This is this guy that explained to me the difference between joules and newtons and all that. He basically explained it as like when a guy's running full speed and he makes impact, that's how much energy is being used.
So there's a couple of guys. I've actually made a list of the top 5 joule creators of joules, however we want to say it, for the 2023 class of the guys we've gone through. I mean, we will continue to add. There may be some gems down the line, but the top 3 are well known. high 4 stars. I don't think there's any 5 stars at the moment, actually. But, first is Cedric Baxter. Everybody knows this guy. I think he's on three's number 1 running back in the country. He is really big. I know he's listed at 2. You've got him at 205, but I
but he's
think
listed at
actually
215 on 24/7.
in some places he's 210 or even 215. We have him at 21 miles per hour, which comes out to 4295 joules. And just to put it in context, we'll see these other guys, but that's a lot. It's about 100 more than the next closest guy. And if he's really 215, that would make that much more. So this is based on a weight of 205 because we kind of were uniform with.
And just for some context with these joules numbers, Anthony Richardson's currently the highest current college player I have with 5,152 joules. So that's right. That's like the top end. So we're pretty high up on the spectrum here.
Yeah, and so Baxter's very big and very fast. His tape shows it. He does have some wiggle, but the first 3 guys, actually the first even 4 maybe, I would say are, when we look at them, these guys do feel a little bit like a straight line type running backs. When they hit the open field, they can get really fast, but they're not exactly the shifty. So I think we'll have to, this is a starting point. This is a foundational study we're kind of doing right now, but I think at some point we might want to add in some lateral agility and things like that. But so Cedric Baxter, though, comes in. He is a low. Do not try to tackle him 15 yards downfield with a full head of steam. I think that's the takeaway here. Roderick Robinson II, he is headed to UCLA. And another one of these guys who's just like massive. I know he's had a couple of clips floating around on Twitter from a camp recently. He was catching some balls out of the backfield and just really just big dude. Listed at 223.
I think he's reported up to 230 now. I think some people are saying so.
And
big
folks,
guy.
Remember, this is a 2023 class, meaning he is a rising senior. He has not even played a down as a senior in high school, and he's pushing 230. We've got him at 20.4 miles per hour for 4,206 joules created. Again, just another absolute beast to tackle. These guys are all that way. I will say, and David, or Matt, chime in if you've kind of watched him. He seems to be one of these guys that maybe takes a little while to get to that max speed. Like, he doesn't wow you with speed, but in the open field, we've clocked him at that speed, which is great. But I'm not sure he's got the shifty kind of like quick acceleration, but certainly can take it the distance if he's given the lane.
Yeah, I think that's something we're going to be working on kind of is trying to figure out acceleration, because obviously that's a big part of this too. It's like, yeah, he can get to 20.4 miles per hour, but he needs kind of a runway to get there. And at that point, like, I don't know, how much does it matter? So like finding acceleration is kind of is something we'll figure out down the road.
Yeah, and then the next guy coming in just under Roderick Robinson is Mark Fletcher, recently committed to Ohio State. Obviously, a premium blue chip prospect going to a premium blue chip school, so that is pretty promising. He's at 225, so again, a guy pushing about 230 and hit 20.3 miles per hour. Similar playing style kind of to Robinson. I think he's got a little more wiggle, a little more flexibility than what I saw from Robinson, but just another one of these big 225-pound running backs coming out of high school. I mean, that's just massive. But very fast in the open field and going to a great school. So we'll probably end up as a group, I think, having him fairly highly rated.
He's a pretty good receiver too. I was looking at his stats. He had a pretty good receiving market share, but I don't think he's ever likely to be a real impact guy for Ohio State. He's going to be more of, one of the rotational guys.
Okay. So far, the Joules have not isolated anybody who's like wowing us, I would say, at the moment.
Well, I would say Baxter. He's RB1.
Yeah, well, Baxter's a lot of people's number one. Quinton Joyner, he is committed, I believe, to USC out of Texas. He has the fastest MPH we've clocked so far at 22 miles an hour, comes in at a solid 190. I mean, that's certainly not small. That's kind of the low end of what we're going to want to see. But again, he could add 5 pounds. He could add 3 pounds or something senior year and then put on, we know these guys put on 15 pounds in college. And 22 miles per hour, though. You love to see that. Matt, you were talking a bit about his game off air. What do you see when you look at Quinton Joyner? I actually haven't had the chance to watch him yet.
Yeah, so he's a really, really good straight line player, obviously, as you said, with the 22 miles per hour. He doesn't really have a ton of wiggle, which is a little disappointing. It kind of limits his game a bit, but there's still some exciting upside there. He's big, he's fast, he's relatively physical. He's not throwing people to the side, but he can pick up, a few extra yards here and there. And I believe he was a pretty good receiver too. I don't recall his stats off the top of my head, though.
Well, that would be great. We love good receivers in our line of work here. And then finally, top 5 guys and jewels created so far that we've looked at comes in Caleb Hicks. Now, he would be a new name, I think, for a lot of our viewers, ranked kind of outside the top 20 running backs on 24/7. I think outside of the top 30 in the on 24/7 in the composite. I think he's outside the top 20 running backs. Out of an absolute powerhouse, Ryan High School in Texas. So the program is producing high-level athletes all the time. I'm pretty interested to get a better look at this guy. 21.2 miles per hour, but going at 195, so he's got that weight. David or Matt, have you had a chance to actually watch him? I know I have not, but this definitely at least puts a guy on my radar I want to take a closer look at.
I liked him a good amount. Yeah, I mean, he's got good size and speed. I don't exactly remember how he was catching the ball, but I mean, I think Alabama's leading for Baxter, so I don't know if he'll end up there. Maybe, I mean, they'll probably take 2 guys, but I know Bama's very high on Hicks, and I think he's predicted to go there. So,
wow. Well, in 2022, in the most recent class, Bama's, by the rankings, their second running back is actually my favorite, Jamarian Miller. I love that guy. And so maybe Hicks will be another one where Alabama goes and finds some 3-star that's, better than the other guys they sign. I know they're in on Richard Young, who's the kind of consensus number 1. They're in on Baxter. Everybody wants to go to Bama. But pay attention, like David said, pay attention to guys that Bama's in on who might be lower ranked, because they are doing some scouting and they're usually right from what we can see. Also, another little trick that I've just, in terms of prospecting, I love mining 3-stars out of, especially for this kind of the running back receiver mold, 3-star guys out of Texas and Florida. Just isolate those guys, put them on a list, and take a look at them through your process. You can almost always find gems there, and we see it every year, guys just popping from those states that go to other schools and end up being great players because those states are just so talent rich. So Caleb Hicks, definitely on my list now. Glad we found him via this system here, and at least worth taking a look at. And anybody else pop, Matt, for you? I mean, I didn't create any more profiles here.
Honorable mention to my guy Jeremiah Cobb, who is a top 5 running back for me, and just missed the list by 1. So he's 190 pounds, runs 21.4, so very good on both ends. Could be a little heavier, but that's fine. He's a very good receiver, though. He put up really good receiving production. He's lined up out wide for them at times too. So he's a guy. I don't know where he's being. I think he's like just outside the top 10 for most services. But I'm a really big fan of him.
Jeremiah Cobb is a 4-star. He's from Alabama. He's kind of composite. He's a top 10, but 24/7 alone has him at 13. And currently trending towards Auburn. I'm sure we will be talking about him more as the recruiting process goes on. If he's a great receiver and he's real high up on the jewels created. For those watching, just to give you a point of reference, we put the joules on the screen, but then also just like generally speaking, if guys hit breaking 21 miles per hour, that's very fast. There's only a handful in each class that do it. So that's always good. If you see a tweet or if you see anyone mentioning a guy over 21, it's very fast. I mean, just for another example, like these guys who are breaking 21 at 195, almost 200 pounds, that's special. I mean, a lot of guys, if they hit 21 miles per hour, they're 180. So these bigger guys that are breaking these numbers, breaking these barriers of 200 pounds and 21 miles per hour is like very impressive from a side speed perspective. So be on the lookout for guys like that.
What was our red flag speed? Do we have one at this point?
Ooh, I don't know. From last year or historically for receivers, I think it was about 19 and a half. I think for running backs, we wanted them a little faster, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, well, we don't have a specific cutoff at this point. I imagine just pure straight line speed is going to matter a little bit less than for wide receivers.
Yeah.
So maybe a cutoff of like 18.5 in like extreme cases, or maybe 19, but it's not going to be too different from wide receiver.
But I think as
the average running back is just heavier, so they're on average going to be a little bit
generally slower. Yeah. But I mean, I think, we're going to tweak this formula. We're going to try to see if we can get something that's projectable. But I think in general, like, I do think there's like a speed score. I mean, there's something to it. If you're 195, I think your speed you can be a little more lenient. If you're 180 pounds, you're probably going to need to hit 21 to even really register. Anyway, I think it's fascinating. I hope that we can continue to refine the process. That's our pledge to you all here at the Official. We're going to keep, just keep churning, keep looking at stuff and try to be innovative and figure out better ways to do this, than just looking at recruiting rankings, because those are good, but I think we can improve it. And that's what we're always trying to do here on the Official. All right, everybody, this has been the Official.
We'll be right back.